From the halls of power to the front lines of cultural battles, Washington Watch is your platform for informed discussion and meaningful and insightful dialogue, all from a biblical perspective, so that you can stand up, speak up, and stay engaged. So, let's navigate these important issues together. Well, President Biden, as I mentioned, announced a new handout at the expense of, yes, you guessed it, you, the taxpayer, yesterday, with plans to bail out $1.2 billion in student loan debt. Now, despite the Supreme Court decision striking down the president's efforts last year, he's still attempting to force taxpayers to cover billions in debt. Now, with the 2024 election approaching, is President Biden campaigning, buying votes at your expense? Joining me now to discuss this, Congressman Keith Self. He serves on the House Foreign Affairs Committee and the House Veterans Affairs Committee. He represents the 3rd Congressional District of Texas. Congressman Self, welcome back to Washington Watch. Thanks for joining us.
Great to be here, Tony. Thank you.
So given the legal slapdown the Supreme Court already delivered to the president last time he was doing this, is this more lawlessness from the Biden administration?
Well, you said it right in your lead-in, Tony. He unilaterally is forgiving this debt, supposedly forgiving, which means he doesn't care what the law says, Congress. He doesn't care what the judiciary says, the Supreme Court. This is massive. And yes, of course, he's buying votes, but the rest of the taxpayers, there is no forgiveness in this. Someone is going to pay these loans back. And now it's going to be you, the taxpayer.
You know, Congressman, I was reading the White House press release on this, the statement of the White House on this yesterday, and I'm just going to quote from it, and I think the American people can see through this. The Biden-Harris administration has now approved nearly $138 billion in student debt cancellation for almost 3.9 million borrowers through more than 24 executive actions. I mean, this sounds like a campaign ad that we've done this, but they haven't done this. They're not paying for this. As you said, it's not only the American people, it's actually the next generation that's paying this, because this is adding to the already $34 trillion debt that we have.
Well, Tony, he realizes it. At one of his press conferences, he said, look, the Supreme Court blocked it, but they didn't stop me. So he understands what he's doing. This is not undercover. This is wide open. The question I have is, when are the American people going to wake up to the fact that this Biden government picks winners and losers? And the losers in this case are the taxpayers.
He goes on in this statement from the White House, it goes on to say those borrowers will receive an email today from President Biden informing them of their imminent relief. Now, there are some limits on this in terms of who gets it now. But I would ask you this, Congressman Self, if you had money that you owed the government through student loans and you're seeing all these bailouts being rolled out, I mean, would you pay your student loan, or would you just wait for the government to bail you out as well?
Of course not. You would wait for your turn. Remember, the Supreme Court stopped $400 billion worth. So they're nickel-and-diming it to death now. They're up to, $138 billion? And they will keep going until election time, because this is a overt buying of votes, Tony, overt.
It should be criminal. I mean, it looks criminal to me to be able to do this with taxpayer money. And I saw Secretary Miguel Cardona. He tweeted this out, or X'd it out, formerly known as Twitter, however you call the new one. He says, if you've been paying your student debt for a decade, you've done your part and deserve relief. Today, we announce relief for over 153,000 more borrowers through SAVE, providing relief for over 3.9 million borrowers total. And he goes on to say, and we're not done yet. So, Congressman Self, I have a question. What if, could we possibly see the Biden IRS adopt this same view? After all, I've been paying taxes since I was 15 years old working at Sonic. Shouldn't I get some relief after all those decades of paying taxes?
Honey, I wouldn't hold your breath. You're not part of those that they want to promote. So I wouldn't hold your breath. They're not going to do that for you. They're only going to do it for people that they want in their camp, the Hunter Bidens of the world, these votes that they need. You make your own way, made a success in your life. You've paid back every loan that you've ever had. You're not in line for this, Tony. Hate to break it to you.
Well, this brings up another question, Congressman Keith Self. We're moving into, I mean, the final window here on the appropriations bills. These temporary funding measures are going to expire in the next couple of weeks. One, the first week in March. The second, I think, is on the 10th of March. Is this going to factor in when, the Democrats are pressing for, more funding for government, and you see money going out the windows that the Biden administration is pushing out like this? I would think this would harden the resolve of Republicans to say it's not going to be business as usual.
Well, I hope it's not. I have signed on to a letter that says we need to go back to the caps that we approved as a Congress months ago, which would actually cut with the advanced appropriations, like $70 billion out of the budget for this year. But we've got to do something to start cutting the budget. We can no longer afford the interest on the national debt. What we cannot do, Tony, is agree to another CR, another continuing resolution that would just continue the Pelosi-Schumer spending and the Pelosi-Schumer policy. That's what we've got to guard against.
Let me ask you about that, because I think, if I read it correctly, in the letter from the Freedom Caucus, they said if we don't get these appropriations, there is a provision if a CR goes throughout the whole period of the year, it actually triggers some cuts. I think about $100 billion, not a lot, but it does trigger some cuts. Is that going to be acceptable if that occurs?
Well, the cuts that they're talking about would be a cut, and nothing else has any cut in it. So this is the only chance we have left to get a cut this year. But what it would do is it would cap defense, and it would have major cuts in the non-defense discretionary spending. I'm happy with that. I like that. I don't know that will get through Congress, but it's a great idea if we want to have any opportunity to make any cuts whatsoever this Congress.
I mean, I would think it's going to run into some difficulty. Obviously, with Democrats, they're not going to support it. I mean, you've got a 2-seat margin in the House, and I would imagine that the defense hawks, even on the Republican side, would be hesitant to support any type of reduction in spending.
You've got it. That's right. But this is our only opportunity. In fact, but the fact of the matter is that defense would stay flat. And so we need to be looking at the next year. See, we already ought to be looking at our own budget for FY25. We're, almost 5 months into this fiscal year, and we haven't settled this yet.
Right.
Let's settle, get some cuts that we can get, and let's move into the discussion of FY25.
So your best guess, based upon conversations you've been having with your colleagues, where do you think this is going when Congress returns next week?
I think we're probably looking at another continuing resolution, which will lose this entire year to Pelosi-Schumer spending cuts. I wish that I had more colleagues in the House of Representatives that would stand for cuts of any type, just some cuts, so we could start making the case to the American people that we are serious about cutting government spending.
So is that a continuing resolution that goes through the course of the year, or is it just a short one just to kick the can down the road another month or two?
It's a great question, Tony. I don't know.
Well, you are absolutely right, Congressman, that it is time that we look at our fiscal house, because it is not in order. It is, and just, by the president giving away this money, this should, again, steel the spines of Republicans to say enough is enough. Congressman Keith Self, always great to see you. Thanks so much for taking time to join us today.
You bet, Tony. Thank you so much.